It's 9:06 on Wednesday, March the 30th. The House Criminal Justice Subcommittee is now in session. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Beck, Curcio, here. Farmer, Griffey, here. Hardaway, Howell, Lamberth, Russell. Moody, here. Russell, here. Sexton, here. Chairman Doggett. Present. Chairman Doggett, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any personal orders? Well, Representative Moody.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm doing a little double duty. But first of all, I would like to introduce Chair Lady Littleton has a shadow with her today, Abby Oakes, who's a senior at Lipscomb, if you'll wave to everybody. And I also see behind Chair Lady Littleton, Mayor Bob Riles, who I served on the State Executive Committee with many years ago. Good to see you. And then I have a shadow today. She is a student with Eagle Forum, and her name is Kaya Shepard. Will you please stand and wave at everybody today? We thank y'all in your interest in being with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see in the back Brad Hartsfield and Ben Goolsby, both from Dixon. Thank you guys for being here. I'm sure there's some other people in here from Dixon as well, but it's crowded. And there they are. I see them waving now. I couldn't see everybody. So thank you all for being here today. Appreciate you coming to the Cal. It's one of the joys of being 35 miles from home is that we get a lot of visitors. So thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll go to our Sergeant of Arms, Mr. Tyler Muniz, for part 2 of our weekly Words of Wisdom.
Welcome back, everybody, for part 2 of the weekly Words of Wisdom. Today they are brought to you by Speaker Cameron Sexton. There has only been one perfect person to walk on this earth. Everyone else has fallen short.
Very good. Thank you very much. Members, we're going to continue working through our calendar. We'll take care of a few bills right off the bat here. If you'll go with me to item number 20, House Bill 601 by Representative Hodges. It will be off notice. Item number 21, House Bill 1438 will be off notice. Item number 39, House Bill 2122 by Representative Warner, off notice. Item number 40, House Bill 1660 by Representative Cooper, off notice. We'll go back to item number 16, House Bill 2722 by Leader Love. You are recognized, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This particular bill is off notice in the Senate, but I did want to just state that we are trying to work on some things this summer to talk about culpability and issues when persons are engaged in an unfortunate situation and get a longer sentence, even though they may have not intended all the things that happened. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be taking this bill off notice and we'll be in conversation with the members this summer to see how we can get this bill in a better posture for next year.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much. Without objection, off notice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That will bring us back to item number 3, House Bill 630 by Representative Gillespie.
Motion. Second.
You are recognized, Representative. There are a couple of amendments here. The first being Code 5736.
That is correct.
Motion. Second.
You are recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. So what this amendment does simply is it aligns the VAPEB, Vulnerable Adult Protective Investigative Team reporting, and the annual CPIB, Child Protective Investigative Team reporting registry, and it just aligns them and makes them the same information on both reports that are sent to us every year.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions on the amendment? Representative Hardaway.
Got so many buttons here, didn't know what to push. Okay. Good morning to the sponsor. Who will this report come to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It comes to the chairs of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Criminal Justice Committee of the House.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we're voting to add amendment code 5736 on the House Bill 630. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes prevail. You adopt. We're now on amendment number 2, which would be code 16626 by Leader Lamberth.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I would move consideration of that amendment, please.
We'll need a motion and a second on this amendment. All right, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is an amendment that would create a registry for unlicensed facilities that many of our aged adults are living in, and this was in another bill that unfortunately was taken off notice and pulled that had multiple different things that it did well beyond this, and this vehicle would handle this language. It is within the same caption and on the same topic. And now, I've promised the sponsor that, there was a fiscal note on this. I think they're going to go through the fiscal impacts of it, and if it in some way were to endanger his bill at some juncture down the road, and if this committee were to put this amendment on, then I would withdraw this amendment if it were to endanger the primary bill. But it is a very, very good idea, in my humble opinion, for us to at least know how many unlicensed facilities are out there, who are staying in those facilities. I mean, at least have some knowledge on the number of facilities that are out there, and that's what this amendment does.
Thank you, Leader. Sponsor, do you have any comments you'd like to make on the amendment?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the Leader Lamberth on his amendment? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And to the leader, this is long overdue. I've got so many calls, so many text messages, so many emails about constituents losing loved ones in a facility that had reputation or complaints, sometimes both. And if there was a registry available that our folks could check and see what has been happening at that facility, then it can save lives, save trips to the emergency rooms, save lawsuits. It's crazy. So I thank the sponsor for accepting the amendment. I thank the leader for bringing it.
Thank you for your comments. Members, are we ready to vote on Amendment 16626? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Ayes prevail. You adopt. We are now on House Bill 630 as amended. Any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we're now voting to send House Bill 630 as amended on to full criminal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes prevail. You move on to full criminal.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Members, we're on item number 15, House Bill 2583 by Representative Eldridge. You are recognized. There is an amendment 16619. You wish to proceed with that?
That is correct, Chairman.
You are recognized on your amendment.
Okay, members, I'd like to take just a moment to give you a little background on why we've got this bill. In our district, we had a situation where it was discovered that there was an unlicensed daycare center operating. When DCS arrived, they had, and I get a little bit upset with this one, but when they arrived, they found 33 to 36 children in this house. And what was happening, she had some kids upstairs, that when people arrived, they saw 4 to 5 children there. And she was placing the rest of these children downstairs in basically it would be my garage. You literally see the garage door in the background. You see insulation hanging from the ceiling. She had a window unit air conditioner there. Out of those kids, 22 to 23 of them were under the age of 2. They were strapped in car seats. They were, and some of them in high chairs. And there is video and audio constantly crying children. And nothing could be done. This lady could not be charged. She was operating unlicensed. Parents up there brought this to our attention. And we have a lot of parents up there that are having a lot of guilt feelings because they were not aware. And then one lady decided there was something wrong in this house. And this is where this bill is coming from. This bill is asking that it be, if you're operating an unlicensed facility, and these children are under the age of 8 years old, this is asking it to be a felony. It is child abuse. What happened to those children is nothing less than child abuse. And the way the current law is written, because there was no signs of physical abuse, that there was no charges. There's a mental aspect. One of these little kids is still rocking when he's placed in his car seat to go home now, is still rocking because he's trying to get out because he's been confined all day long in this chair. So members, that's the purpose of this bill, to make a change. I think when something like this happens, there's got to be more than a slap on the wrist. Got to be. And members, that's the purpose of this bill.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sponsor. The amendment makes the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any questions or comments? Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this. When we called and described this to me on the phone, it was horrific. I mean, I've got 3 small children, and I can't imagine being in that situation. So no question about your motive or your intent here. As you know, I think we're trying to work with DCS to make sure we get the technical pieces of this bill correct, and so it's late in session. I feel perfectly comfortable voting for this, even if it's not kind of in its final posture. But I hope that we can work together between sub and full to make sure that we get the details right, because this is an important issue. We want to make sure we stop it. So I just wanted to mention that.
And I do appreciate the efforts that DHS, DCS, and the Attorneys General's Conference is making in this bill. You know, when you see that I mean, they're able to keep 4 children unlicensed. That's the limit, and this was a gross abuse of this. And actually, in the court findings, she could actually apply for a license to keep children, and there's got to be something done there. And I appreciate everyone working with me on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you say there were court hearings and then a finding where she can still apply to keep children?
That is correct.
That's outrageous. Thank you. Thank you for the bill, sir.
Any other comments? I am going to go out of order here. I've had some constituents of mine that have come in the room here before we take a vote on the amendment. With us today is David Hamilton. He is the chair of our Pulaski Boys and Girls Club. He's with us. Joining him is Devin Yurko, Robin Perry, and Bruce Hull from the South Central Middle Tennessee group with Boys and Girls. So thank you all very much for being here with us today. All right. We're now voting to add Amendment Code 16619 on the House Bill 2583. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes prevail. You adopt. We're on 2583 as amended. Any other comments?
No, sir.
Okay. We're now voting to send House Bill 2583 on to full criminal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes prevail. You move on to full criminal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Members, let's go to item number 30, House Bill 2525 by Vice Chair Sexton. You are recognized on your bill. There's an amendment that you wish to discuss.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment code is 15984.
Okay. You are recognized on your amendment.
What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is I'd like to get this amendment put on this bill. The bill actually failed in the Senate, but for future reference, I'd like to have it put on there. This is a good bill, and we've worked very hard on it. I know a lot of people, even on this committee, has indulged me, and we've worked with the departments, and I'm very grateful for all the work that's been done, both inside and outside. And if you would, please, I'd like to get the amendment put on there. I'd like to just very briefly share a couple of things, and then I have some person that's come a long ways to speak. I'd like to give them the 4 minutes that they're allowed, since they've come such a long way.
Absolutely. Any questions on the amendment? The amendment does make the bill.
That's correct.
So let's get the amendment on, and then we'll discuss the bill as amended. All those in favor of Amendment Code 15984, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes prevail. You adopt. If you wish to be recorded as a no, please see the clerk. We're now on the bill as amended. Do you want to make comments, or would you rather have the testimony first?
Testimony, please.
Okay. We will go out of session. Representative Sexton, who are we going to be hearing from?
If you don't mind, Chairman, let him introduce himself. It's Dan, and I can't.
Greenberg. Okay,
Greenberg,
very well.
yes.
If you will, in front of you is a little button there you can push, and that'll turn your microphone on. If you'll introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 4 minutes for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Greenberg. I'm an attorney with the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to express my views on this measure. Let me begin by saying I'm a former state legislator myself, and I appreciate that the job that you all have involves making some very burdensome and consequential decisions. I have a lot of good memories of my time as a state legislator in Arkansas, and because I enjoyed being part of the tradition of self-government, and I thank all of you in a small way for allowing me to be part of that tradition of self-government today. House Bill 2525, as amended, would greatly improve Tennessee's justice system. The bill as amended is very important because it ends Tennessee's system of Tennessee's two-track process of justice. The current process separates criminal prosecutions of individuals and civil forfeitures of their property. And the bill replaces, as amended, this bill replaces the separation with a streamlined one-track process. And I'd like to say just a word about the problems that have been created by the status quo. When Tennessee currently takes personal property, its owners face a 1-2 punch. First, they lose property through seizure. Then they discover they'll have to pay for their own representation in order to get that property back in civil court. And when they discover that they're going to have to face litigation costs that often are larger than the value of the property, and when they consider the odds that they might fail, they often give up. And so there are many instances of seizure and forfeiture where no rational Tennessean would pursue recovery. And I want to underscore this point by discussing the information that's available about seizures and forfeitures in Tennessee. I looked at the available data on cash-only seizures in Tennessee. That originally comes from the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. And I ended up looking at about 36,000 instances of recorded seizures from the last 5 years. And it looks to me as if a reasonable estimate for the median size of cash-only forfeitures, cash-only seizures in this state is as follows. This is the median figures. $609 in cash in 2017, $707 in cash in 2018, $695 in 2019, and $831 in 2020. So the data suggests that a typical cash forfeiture in Tennessee, somewhere around $610 to $830. And I worry that some policymakers in Tennessee may have come to the conclusion that a typical cash seizure consists of hundreds of thousands of dollars? Because that conclusion is very wrong. These figures are really important for policymakers to see how seizure and forfeiture really work in Tennessee. My estimate of the default judgment rate that people in Tennessee face when they're subjected to cash seizures is about 78%. And there are some people who suggest that the reason that these people don't show up in court is because they know that they lose in court. And the evidence suggests, I think, that there's a much better explanation that these people default, which is the people we're talking about have realized that hiring a lawyer to get their stuff back is uneconomic. It's reasonable to guess that hiring a lawyer in such a case is going to cost the person who's been subject to seizure somewhere around $2,000 or $3,000, and there's no reason at all to pay an attorney thousands of dollars to get back hundreds of dollars. So that's an important contributor to why we see this epidemic of default judgments in Tennessee today. I think there's also a second problem with seizure and forfeiture as it's practiced today, not just in Tennessee, but nationally. I think many of us have seen news accounts that suggest that the practice is pockmarked with evidence that revenue concerns drive the behavior of law enforcement. Law enforcement officers and other government agents get distracted from focusing on public safety and crime control instead of pursuing revenue as part of their job. And I think forcing law enforcement officers to serve as their own revenue collectors, it really creates very troublesome pressures, very troublesome incentives that are likely to distract them from the central mission. So I commend the people who've worked on this bill, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for our guest? Seeing none, thank you for being with us today. Representative Sexton, is there any others? Okay. All right, members, we will go back into session. Representative Sexton, you are recognized for your remarks.
Again, I would like to thank everyone that's worked with me on this. I have one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to make sure that law-abiding citizens are able to keep their possessions or at least have a fair trial and be charged with a crime before they lose their possessions. And that is the only thing that drives me in this. I want law enforcement to continue to catch the criminals and charge them with crimes and put them in prison. And they do a good job. But there's a problem with this system as we know it today, and it needs to be changed. And I understand that it fell by a very small margin in the Senate. So with that, I'm going to request to take this off notice.
Thank you, Representative Sexton. I will commend you on your efforts and your heart and your work on this.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
House Bill 2525, off notice. Brings us back to item number 14. House Bill 2427 by Representative Lafferty. You are recognized. Any amendments?
Yes, sir. Amendment number 12903.
We do not have that amendment, actually.
Oh, no.
That's the bill drafting code.
What have I done wrong here?
Yeah, there is no amendment. That is the drafting code on your bill itself.
So do you have an amendment number?
I do not know, sir.
So then are we good to roll?
I just threw you a curveball. I was just going to see if you was on,
That's why I whiffed, not because I can't hit a curve. That's all right. Yeah, are you ready for me to begin?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate your time, committee. Everybody up here has heard all this before. I don't want to take too much of your time today. I've heard rumors around this place that when departments don't want bills to pass, I've only been here 4 years, but I have heard rumors that when departments don't want bills to pass, they tinker with fiscal notes, and I noticed that my fiscal note this time has gone up quite considerably. But the purpose of this bill is to tease out information, and it's to kind of follow up with Representative Sexton's bill. There is an appearance, when you look into the numbers, that those that can't take care of themselves, those that can't defend themselves, are the ones that are losing out here. As pointed out just a moment ago, a seizure is between $600 and $800. What sense does it make to try to go to court for a few $1,000s? What sense does it make to spend weeks trying to learn the whole process, the ins and outs of the law, when you need to be working on your own job or taking care of your own kids? It doesn't. It doesn't make sense time-wise, doesn't make sense financially. The appearance is that it's folks that can't protect themselves are the ones that are being hurt most by civil asset forfeiture. There are certainly some losses that are significant to people's lives. There are certainly some criminals that get caught and should be caught and taken care of and prosecuted. Doing it with a civil process versus a judicial process, in my humble opinion, is the wrong way to go about this because of the smaller, I would say the little guy that gets caught up in the middle of all of it and taken down with it. Are there any speakers here today that are wanting to speak about this? Am I the only one?
I do have one that wants to speak on this.
Okay.
Or at least they turn their name in.
Okay. Well, so the bill's pretty simple. We're trying to get some reporting. That's it. That's all we're looking for. You've all heard it before. I didn't make a huge effort this time to go around and get co-sponsors. I had just under 40 co-sponsors last year when I did this, but given the path that I've run into, given the resistance from the Department of Safety, such so yesterday I was told there were one or two options of how to do this process, and it was delivered to me in such a tone that I actually had to ask the young lady to leave my office so that we could bring the temperature down and have an actual conversation. With that, I absolutely want passage of this bill. I absolutely have an idea on how to fix it, and I'm absolutely certain that I will be told that my idea on how to fix this cannot be done, because that's what I keep running into. I have a solution, but I have no partner willing to work with me or to talk with me in the Department of Safety right now. And with that, I sure would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Leader Lamberth.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I'm disappointed you've had that experience with the department. I'd be happy to be a part of trying to help be a solution on that, or find a solution on that. I have always found the departments, when you work with them long enough, that you can usually get to a solution. I mean, sometimes they'll disagree with this, but it's this body that decides those policy decisions, and that's how it should be. But at the end of the day, I have found them to be a very good avenue for information on how to actually make the ideas and policies that we set in place work. I did have a couple of questions on just some of this. Quite frankly, I support the bill today. I think it's a good concept as far as transparency. We have passed bills like this in the past, and in fact, some of them are already on the books. And there's a couple of tweaks in here that could probably, and I think you've already mentioned that, just make it where it would work well. But the more information out there, the better. I did want to say just one thing, really kind of two here. The fiscal notes are developed by our fiscal review folks. And so the departments are able to provide information. Outside groups are able to provide information. I just recently met with fiscal review on a fiscal note on one of my bills. I don't know if you've done that yet, but I would recommend it. If you have questions about the fiscal note, and I would recommend that for any member, I have found that body who works, again, for the legislature but is independent to be very open to additional information. So if there's additional information you can provide them, they don't just rubber stamp what any department puts in. Those departments and outside groups and other information is put into a fiscal note. And then that fiscal review committee and the staff there, I mean, those are the folks that are really doing it. I know you know that, but I want to just say that, publicly, that's how these fiscal notes come about. I've had fiscal notes I disagreed with too, but I found that to be a very helpful process to meet with them. On the asset forfeiture front, on its own, I like a lot of the stuff you've got in here because I think it will show exactly what this is. But I've literally, in almost 20 years of practicing law, never met a police officer who was seizing anybody's property that they thought was innocent or that literally they were seizing because they were trying to get their own paycheck. All these folks are paid by departments anyways. They are on loan, by and large, to the Drug Task Force, which does a lot of this, but they're a police officer anyways. If asset forfeiture didn't even exist, and I know you weren't necessarily saying that, so I'm saying this more for some of the public comments I've heard on some of this out there. Yes, there are officers out there that don't do their job properly, that, may commit crimes, that may not do the job right. They're a rare occurrence out there. Most officers are out there to try to keep us safe, protect our streets, and I know you and I both support them 100%. Transparency is how you keep any bad actor from taking advantage of a system. But proving the criminality of an asset and proving the criminality of an individual, those are good things to keep separate, because you're proving in essence that these assets are contraband. It should be an easy process. It should be a transparent process. It should be one that anybody could go through without an attorney. But it is a judicial process. So I just wanted to say that, and again, that's not necessarily just to what your comments were. I appreciate this effort. I know it's something you're very passionate about. But I did just want to kind of state it out there as far as this larger conversation on asset forfeiture that we're having. We've done a ton of work for 5 or 6 years. Transparency continues to help with that. There's always another step that we can take to just make sure no one's getting taken advantage of the system, but that, quite frankly, drug dealers that are trying to profit off the poison they're spreading throughout our communities, that, yeah, their assets are contraband. If you made money dealing illegal drugs, then yes, absolutely, let it be known your assets are subject to forfeiture. That's what this is all about. So thank you, sir, for bringing the bill.
Thank you.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, sponsor, and thank you, leader, for those words. Certainly, like you, I support our law enforcement. I'm going to take this occasion to remind everyone that our troopers need a raise and TBI needs more agents. Okay? But I want to get clear on your bill. It only asks for reporting.
That's correct. This is a reporting bill.
And you're getting pushback on the transparency, in essence. So that's what reporting does.
That's correct. If I might add, this seems to me, our governor, one of his pushes has been criminal justice reform. This seems to me to go hand in glove with some of what he's trying to do. But that's just my take. That's just my opinion.
May I ask a question? Is there already a report in place that the department does do?
Yes.
And this bill is adding additional requirements?
Yes.
Okay.
We're just trying to better isolate what it is that's being seized, how it's being seized, where it's being seized.
Okay. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Sir, I support your bill. If you move forward with it, I support your bill.
Thank you.
Representative Griffey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this. And I know you bring this in the absolute spirit of trying to get transparency to our government, which I fully support. I have had some questions and concerns by Department of Safety about the ability to produce the data that you're seeking. And I certainly, we don't want to pass something that they're not going to be able to meet or accomplish, or it's going to take a great effort and resources that we might not all fully appreciate at this point in time. As the earlier speaker did say, there were, I think he mentioned approximately 36,000 seizures in the last 5 years, and then the average median amount they thought was around 600, 700, 800 bucks, around in there. And then you also mentioned that some of these seizures are actually legitimate for proceeds of drug crimes and so forth. So I kind of wonder if perhaps having the data on one side or the other would, I think, benefit everybody in this committee, because it might reinforce the department's position or it might reinforce your position. But, you know, it may be the case that the reason there's only median is $600 or $700 or $800 is because people get, you know, arrested with methamphetamine and a wad of cash because they've been dealing the methamphetamine, and they're going to abandon that property. They're not going to waste their time and effort to try to get their $500 back, $300 back, because they know they're busted. Now they're serving a sentence. So the devil's in the details, and the more data we have can be the better. And I just kind of, maybe it's the will of this committee that we take up this bill in a summer study and look at it and review it and see what we can do so this committee has more data maybe next year or going forward so that we can make the appropriate policy decisions. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to summer study this bill.
That is, it's a proper motion. It has been seconded. Any objection to the motion? Representative Hardaway.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from the sponsor, his position on summer.
Very well.
I think I'd prefer just a straight-up vote today, if that's permissible by the committee. I know it's your committee. And
Well, we have a proper motion on the table that has been seconded. It would be, I think, up to those that made the motion whether or not they withdraw their motion. But
And Mr. Chairman, and to the representative, the sponsor of the bill, it's not, I really think that this needs to be studied. Just rather than having up or down and killing something, I think doing a summer study may get this committee together, look at what data this Department of Safety can produce for this committee later on to evaluate. And I think it would be beneficial for everyone. I don't necessarily want to see your bill killed, because I don't know if the votes are there or not. But that's the intent. It's not to mess up your bill or anything. It's a valiant effort. I know you have the best of intentions with transparency. So that's the purpose of the motion.
if that's the will of the committee, then summer study it is.
Representative Hardaway.
Yes, is the chair and the criminal sub full committee chair committing to the summer study?
If that's the will of the committee, then I do believe it is a noble cause. I do know that the Department of Safety is doing things now. They've worked on this. They do reporting. There's always, I think, room for improvement on anything that we do, because we don't want to be stagnant over time and allow our resources to fall behind. So if it is the will of the committee that we do a summer study, then I would support that real study on this. Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to my good friend from Shelby County, I've participated in multiple summer studies on this topic, so we certainly have a track record of conducting those. But I do want to remind everybody that the authorization for those are ultimately up to the Speaker of the House. So we vote on several summer study motions throughout the year. You know, not all of them become true full-blown summer studies, but we certainly, advocate for them. But, ultimately we get what we get and we don't throw a fit.
Thank you.
All right. Previous question has been called on the motion. We're now voting to send House Bill 2427 to summer study. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes prevail. If you wish to be recorded as a no, please see the clerk.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Let's go down to item number 17. House Bill 1968 by Representative Freeman. He is waiting patiently to make his way to the podium. As a reminder, we are on item number 17, House Bill 1968. Representative Freeman, do we have a motion or a second? I do? Okay, thank you. So you are recognized on the bill, no amendments?
No, sir. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. I think I also have someone that would like to speak on the bill.
Would you like to hear testimony first?
Yes, please, if that's okay.
Without objection, we'll go out of session. If I can have Bill Corbin and Chris Castleberry. We've got, since it's two of you, I'll bring you both up at the same time. No, just one. Since there's one of you, you can come up by yourself then. You will have 4 minutes for your testimony. If you would, please state your name for the record, and then you can begin.
Sure. My name is Chris Castleberry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Chief Operating Officer for Horticulture Lighting Group. We're a LED lighting manufacturer based in East Tennessee, Union County. And so one of our primary markets served is hemp and cannabis growing facilities. So we're in tune with the market activity in that industry. And so I'm here today in support of HB 1968. So we see the economic activity in states where cannabis is legalized, and with the expectation that federal legalization will come at some point. As a Tennessean, and really speaking from a business perspective, I'm here to encourage your vote to support this bill, primarily for the economic benefit of the state and the citizenry. I think the numbers are strong and self-evident. Over a first 5-year period, if this bill passes, it's more than $500 million contribution to the general fund. And I think the passage of this bill puts Tennessee in a positive position to attract investment, entrepreneurship in the state ahead of neighboring states. And now we see neighboring states already that have different levels of cannabis legalization. And rather than see the state miss out on investment, I think this bill puts us in a prime position.
Thank you very much for your comments. Members, questions or comments for our guest? Leader Lamberth.
This may not be something, and I may ask the sponsor this, but since you're here, have you had a chance to review the entire bill, or are you just focused more on kind of the front-end growing aspects of it?
I've reviewed the bill.
Let me ask about part down toward the bottom. Okay. So there's a mechanism in here that is an automatic release for drug dealers. I mean, those that have chosen to illegally sell marijuana in the past. And it basically has an automatic that, I mean, they're going to compile a list, and unless you fall within certain categories where there were violence involved or other drugs, it's an automatic release for those folks. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm not familiar with the details of that. I assume that would be some kind of retroactive implementation of the bill status. I think the bill provides significant regulation and oversight to both Department of Health and Department of Agriculture to set rules and regulations to ensure safety for Tennessee and its citizenry.
Well, I know, but it also lets out every dangerous drug dealer that's in right now that was dealing marijuana, even if they were dealing other stuff and didn't get caught doing that. But I mean, the illegal sale of drugs, it seemed like you were articulating that you wanted to make sure this was licensed and professionals and everyone are doing it properly.
Correct.
These folks absolutely were not, and it's a part of the bill that they will be released.
I would suggest we review that part of the bill.
I would as well, and thank you. I appreciate your testimony. And so the other question I had, and this is more as a business owner. So in the state of Tennessee, we have right-to-work laws. We, for the most part, set some broad regulations for businesses, but we trust you to run your business in the way that you see fit. In this bill, at least my reading of it, and I want to get your take on this, it says that if someone fails a drug test for marijuana, if we were to pass this, then the business can't really do anything to them, or at least there's no state law that can enforce anything that a business would do. Are you comfortable with that?
I think broad powers are given to the Department of Health and Department of Agriculture to establish rules and regulations after the bill passes. So I think due diligence should be done in how that's handled. I wouldn't give a carte blanche forgiveness for marijuana usage, especially in certain work disciplines.
Well, I mean, specifically, it mentions that there's no adverse action that can be taken against someone. Have you reviewed that portion just as a business owner? How do you feel about that? If you haven't,
I
it's
would be
perfectly fine.
concerned.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate your testimony today. I thought you did a wonderful job sharing with us what your business does. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, Leader. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here, sir. How do you see what would be the impact of passing this bill on encouraging the feds to take action on the legalization of marijuana or the regulation of marijuana?
I don't know that it would be a measurable encouragement. We see states at varying levels of legalization all over the map. I think the federal government regulations will move federally, when leadership, decides to make that a priority. It's hard to guess when that might be. And so states are kind of moving forward at their own pace. Where we have seen legalization, we haven't seen some of the dire ramifications that we all, can be concerned about and hear about. So I think a lot of it is, over concern over some issues, and I think we see economic benefit where legalization has occurred.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for those comments. Did I understand that you like this bill most because of the economic benefits to Tennessee?
That is the reason I'm sitting here, yes.
So could you explain what your definition of those economic benefits are for Tennessee?
Sure. So in the brief that I think everyone has, it lays out the tax benefits and revenue generation within the state, the base numbers to the general fund over first 5 years after passing is a little over $500 million.
Thank you. And could the opioid manufacturers make that same argument back in the 90s?
I think it's not an apples to apples comparison, but you could make economic arguments for all sorts of evils. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Corbin, for being here today and coming and sharing your experience with the committee. Let me just ask you a question. As a Tennessean and taxpayer, would you have liked to have had the opportunity to express your opinion on maybe a ballot preference poll at the ballot, whether one, maybe Tennessee should legalize medical marijuana, two, whether Tennessee should decriminalize the possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, and maybe three, should Tennessee legalize and regulate the commercial sales of recreational use marijuana? How would you feel about that as a Tennessean?
I'm fully in support of Tennesseans' voices being measured and heard in any way possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Representative Beck?
Thank you. Can you explain to us what impact this will have for agriculture in the state, with this being a new commodity that could possibly be grown in the state, and how it would be handled?
Sure. I can't speak to the specific numbers, but obviously the agriculture around raising cannabis would be the foundation to provide the product for the other infrastructure that would also be built out with dispensaries and medicinal facilities. So I think you would see a large amount of investment across the state very quickly. And we can look at similar states where it's been enacted. Oklahoma is a really good example where there's a massive influx of investment and tremendous economic activity around the legalization.
And you just mentioned Oklahoma. How did it affect their farmers and agriculture? Do you know?
I don't know how to respond to that in a measurable way. the industry grew from nothing to, hundreds of millions of dollars in first year. And so the farmers, the agriculture, horticultural development in that state, reap the benefits of that.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for our guest? Seeing none, thank you for your time and being with us.
Thank you.
We also have on our list Elizabeth Stroker from the Department of Safety, if she's here and wish to. Nope. Okay. Thank you. All right. We will go back into session. Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. I've been up here for 4 years and run a couple of pretty big bills, and I've never had the number of departments reach out to me in objection of a bill like this. Having tried to work through a lot of the specifics of the bill, to the leader's questions earlier about Section 22 for releasing those with possession charges in the past. That section still needs work clearly to make sure that the intent is accurate. The other question, I'm sorry, what was your other question to the?
Thank you, Chairman. So the one, so we've had other bills that created a review process for folks where we have changed the law and, quite frankly, reduced the penalties, and we've done that several times in the last few years. I've carried several of those. The Chairman's carried several of those. There's usually a review process for that instead of an automatic mechanism, so that was the first thing. So I'm glad to hear that you agree that needs some work. And then the second thing is really for businesses to have the freedom to set their own work policies, because we do that. If a business were to say, look, you can't drink alcohol and work here. They don't want the concern of that being in your system. You can't use marijuana or other drugs and work in that particular business. That business owner knows their business better than anybody else out there. Those are policies that employers and employees can work out together. Just some of the language in this seems to kind of override that. And I know you're a strong business advocate, as I am. I know that is probably not the intention of the bill.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. That was the second question. The actual intent and the way I read it, and there was some confusion back and forth, is that if somebody had used cannabis a week prior and the test picked it up, that they couldn't be fired. There are tests actually available today that test for immediate use. So if someone comes into work, you believe them to have been using cannabis that morning or that day, there is a test in place. And so what the intent again was, and apparently it didn't get there, was to make sure that it couldn't just ban the use. If somebody decides they want to go to, on a Saturday or Friday night, and just like you have a glass of wine, if you were to test, that Monday morning for it, it would show up in a test, whereas alcohol burns through your system a little quicker. So the intent is not to allow for businesses to not be able to test and not dictate that they don't want people incapacitated or under the influence to work. It's just that if this were to become legal in the state of Tennessee, that you couldn't dictate what somebody does in their free time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna like to take this off notice, but I really urge everyone to review the fiscal note and really as I work through the summer and into next year, I'm going to bring this back, and I would like for everybody to really look and see exactly what this would mean to the state of Tennessee. There is a very real possibility that by the time we come back next year, we will be the only state that touches Tennessee that has not done some sort of legalization, whether through medical or full recreational. And while I don't believe it should all be about money, I think that's a big piece to this. And Representative Beck brought up the point that this could also give an alternative for the farmers of Tennessee to keep their farms and have a meaningful crop on it. And with that, I'd like to take it off notice.
We've got two people that just want to make a statement, if it's okay.
Happy to talk to them.
Chairman Curcio.
Or answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this bill. I mean, obviously, it's a conversation that we're all having as a country, so this committee should have it as well. Just some comments on Section 22, just given some work history that I've got here in the legislature, and I won't be here next year to bother you. So I just thought I would.
You'll be missed.
Okay, thank you. But on that, rather than a blanket, I mean, I understand you've got language in there, you know, people who are also not serving a sentence for felony offense involving violence or the use of firearms or felony drug offense for controlled substance other than marijuana. So I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to target the folks who are incarcerated who are guilty only of the behavior that you're attempting to decriminalize. I would suggest to you that if you bring this back in a different form, look at what we did on the drug-free school zones piece, where instead of it being a blanket, and certainly there's examples of this at the federal level with the First Step Act, that there be an adversarial hearing and a review process so that maybe these folks could petition the court where they were convicted, and that way the DA and the judge can get together and look at the facts of the case and also consider other charges that maybe they were not convicted on. A lot of times, especially when there's gang activity present, and they're trying to avoid witnesses coming in and having to testify because of retaliation concerns. They'll say, well, we've got them on the marijuana, so let's just stick with that, and then we don't have to get aunt and uncle to come in here and testify. So, again, I don't know what the ultimate fate of your bill is going to be, but it's specific to Section 22, I would encourage anybody going to not seek a blanket clemency or release. I just don't think that's ever a good idea. I don't know that that was really your intention anyway. But rather to create an adversarial review process and give that judge and DA an opportunity to really re-examine the facts of the case, giving the new set of laws that we have. So just a suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those words, Chairman. And as I said, out of order, you will be missed. And you're right. We have had this conversation, and we've been, biting away at the corners of it. And my intent was to bring a very broad bill to expand that conversation and allow a fiscal review to have a full analysis of what the impact of that would be on the state of Tennessee. So thank you for those words.
Thank you. Representative Griffey, brief comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, the issue of marijuana has been contentious and divisive up here for years and years and within the country. And I just, I'm a firm believer in we're a representative democracy, and we're supposed to be up here trying to represent the interest and the will of the people. And this issue, I would just encourage everybody, we ought to get some input from the actual voters before we take action regarding marijuana. I'm not necessarily one for decriminalizing it or recreational use, but that's my kind of personal opinion at this point in time. But this, it's hard to say that marijuana is, people can't use it responsibly like many people use alcohol responsibly. So I just would encourage this entire body to get the input from the citizens, what they would like us to do on this. And I just want to throw that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Beck, for a very, very brief comment.
Very brief, and listening to my colleague from Henry County, we are a representative body. This is polling at 80% approval in this state. So I think as a representative body, we need to represent the members of our constituency and get this on the board. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Members, Mr. Sponsor, your wish is to take off notice. Without objection, House Bill 1968 will be off notice.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Thank you. I saw Representative Towns running around earlier. Here he comes. Item number 18, House Bill 1493 by Representative Towns. You have a motion and a second. You're recognized. Yes, sir. Representative, there are a couple amendments here. One of them, code 05797. Is that one that you may wish to consider?
Absolutely, sir. Yes, sir.
We will need a motion and a second on the amendment. Representative Beck's doing double duty over here, but we are in proper posture, so proceed with the explanation of your amendment.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Representative Beck, I really appreciate it. I really do. Morning, members. Members, what it is, this amendment comes to me from some of the herbalists and some of the people that sell this particular product. And what they seek to do is to tighten up the sale of kratom. And for the most part, I'll read just a little bit of it, and it's self-explanatory here. But what it says certified certificate of analysis means that a certificate from a third-party laboratory describing the results of the laboratory testing and sample, which give you some assurance that you're getting what you're supposed to get. Kratom extract means a food product or dietary ingredient containing any of parts of the leaf of the plant. Let's see, that has been extracted and concentrated in order to provide a more standardized dosing. Kratom products mean a food or dietary ingredient containing any part of the leaf, the plant, or an extract of it that is manufactured as a powder or capsule. Processors mean that an entity that prepares and manufactures and distributes or maintains the kratom product. It goes on to talk about the packaging and the size, and I think what they're trying to do is to make sure that people, like a layperson, can come in to a store and buy so much of it and begin to sell it themselves. They want to make sure that if it's being sold, that it's actually sold, in the proper quantity, and so forth. They think that this is something that the industry needs, and it's really, as I said, it's actually tightening up on the sale of the product itself. Also, it has a clause in there: retailers should not distribute, sell, or expose for sale kratom products to an individual that are under 18. And in essence, that's really what it's trying to do, is just tighten up on the sale of the product.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Curcio on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
Questions called on the amendment. Any objections? Seeing none, we're voting to add amendment code 05797 on the House Bill 1493. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes prevail. We adopt. If you wish to be recorded as no, please see the clerk. We are now on House Bill 1493 as amended. Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
Previous question has been called. We do have testimony. Did you have testimony today?
Mr. Chairman, at this point, we're going to forego that. I did have somebody fly in, but I don't see him, and I don't want to hold up the workers of the body here. So we'll just forego it.
Okay.
I don't see him.
Well, very good. Question's been called. Any objections? Seeing none, we're voting to, yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes. Would you withdraw?
I'd be glad to withdraw.
He withdraws his motion. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that, Chairman. I just was wanting some clarity. I believe we passed a bill 1997 by Representative Cochran. I'm just wondering what the differences are between these two bills, because they mention the same type drug.
Chairman Curcio, if you want to answer that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only reason I chime in is because the amendment you're referring to on Representative Cochran's bill was sponsored. I sponsored that amendment. It's a difference of opinion here. It's regulation versus making the sale criminal. So that would be the main difference there.
So there is difference. Okay. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other members? Seeing none, we're now voting on sending House Bill 1493 to full criminal. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The noes prevail. The bill fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members.
If you wish to be recorded as an aye, you can see the clerk. Item number 22, almost called the wrong number. Item number 22, House Bill 2620 by Representative Harris. You have a motion and a second. You recognize there's an amendment code 16307.
That is correct.
You are recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Chairman, and to the committee. HB 2254 does have an amendment, and that amendment does make the bill.
Excuse me, Representative, we're on House Bill 2620.
20, I'm sorry,
Or did I say
HB
amendment or
2620, that's correct. It does have an amendment, and that amendment does make the bill. We are one of 11 states that still doesn't have this in place just yet, but many people who own a gun do not know that in most cases that your gun is covered by your home or auto insurance policy in a theft. However, they do require that you have an incident report in most cases in order for the claim to be processed. Currently, Tennessee law does not require the loss or theft of a firearm be reported to a law enforcement. This bill would require that a person who owns a firearm report the loss or theft of the firearm to a law enforcement agency within 72 hours of discovering the loss. And 72 hours gives a person time to look for the gun, have a weekend or so to look for it or search for it, and then just notify law enforcement.
Questions on the amendment, Leader Lamberth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we've had several versions of this bill over the years. We had one earlier in the session. I can't state it strongly enough. I don't know why we want to criminalize being a victim of a thief. I've never understood it. I'll never understand it. On every one of these bills, someone steals someone else's property. And then you want to criminalize the victim of the theft. I don't understand it. I've never understood it. I don't understand it in this bill. And with all due respect, I know you want to make your community safer. Let's go after the thieves. Let's go after the criminals. Let's go after the bad guys. And please just leave the good guys alone. If somebody's been a victim of theft, leave them alone, except for trying to get them recompense for what the thief stole. I mean, it's just, and you're not the first person that I've shared this with. I've said this on other bills before. I just think it's a wrong direction. And so let's increase penalties on stealing a gun. Let's increase law enforcement ability to be able to investigate and go after those thieves. Let's intervene where the criminal activity is. And I do appreciate the fact that you put it all the way down to a C misdemeanor and it's a gun safety class. I thought that was a very artful way to handle it if we were to go that direction. But I don't think a victim of crime should have to be forced to go to a class that isn't going to change the heart or the mind of the criminal that victimized them. So send a criminal to a class, send them to jail, put them on probation, go after the criminal, please, and I'll be with you every time. On this one, in this particular regard, just as every other bill that's come like this, I can't support the amendment, can't support the bill, but that's the only reason why. Your goals, I share, and you're a passionate advocate for your district and for keeping your community safer. I just can't go down this particular road. Thank you, sir.
Response?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Leader, for making that statement as well. And I do agree with you. The goal of this is not to criminalize the person who's lost their item or their item was stolen from them, but the goal is to just increase the ability for law enforcement to know that an item is missing out there, and that if it is used, that we can track back to where it came from. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Representative Beck.
Thank you, Representative Harris, for bringing this. What my police officers tell me is where we really have a problem is people leaving their guns in their cars and not locking them. You know, I know that your bill doesn't cover that, but if there was a way to have some type of gun safety class where the vehicle's not locked, and I know there's been discussion that those may not be accurate statistics, but I went back to the police and I asked them, I said, you know, where do these come from? And they said, these come from weekly reports, not when we catch the criminal. These come from reports from the owners as to if their car was locked or unlocked. And it's so reckless to leave, first of all, your car unlocked in anywhere in Tennessee, but number two, it's so reckless to leave your car unlocked with a dangerous firearm in there. So I know where you're going, and I appreciate your sentiment.
Thank you. Any other questions, Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the sponsor. I think from the way I understand your amendment, it brings a sense of accuracy and transparency to the actual theft of firearms. Is that correct, as amended?
Yeah, so that would be correct. It also, just to add that extra layer of process in the investigation process of a future incident that could take place. So if a crime did take place, the tracking of where that that firearm may have came from would be known by someone reporting that their gun or firearm was missing, lost, or stolen.
So in essence, your bill would help the investigations by law enforcement of stolen weapons.
Yes, that's the goal. We obviously in Shelby County we had a large incident that happened from one of our top leaders. So she was also affected by that, and so this is part of that process. So yes, it would help law enforcement.
And it may very well keep citizens from having to go into their pockets, deep into their pockets in legal costs. And if they are accused of participating in a gun crime where they had not reported the weapon stolen.
Yeah, that's correct. And I don't necessarily see the harm in someone just telling law enforcement that their firearm was stolen or missing. So.
Thank you. I support law enforcement. I support the Second Amendment. I support your bill.
Thank you.
Question has been called on the amendment. Any objection? Seeing none, we're now voting to add amendment code 16307 on the House Bill 2620. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Noes prevail. The amendment fails. If you wish to be recorded as an aye on the amendment, please see the clerk. We are now on back on House Bill 2620. Question has been called. Any objection? Seeing none. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really would think it would be proper to give the sponsor a chance to tell us what the bill does now without the amendment. We know what it did with the amendment.
Chairman Farmer.
Mr. Chair, I thought the amendment rewrote the bill, so that should be an explanation, so I just want to stand on my previous question.
Okay, we're now voting on previous, or you have a response before we?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I wasn't asking about the language or the meaning of the amendment, but what does the bill say? What are we about to vote on? What does the bill in its present form say? I think the sponsor deserves an opportunity to share that with us and to the constituents who are watching.
The current posture that we're in is a motion was made by a member of the committee, previous question. There was objection. So now we're voting on previous question. All right. We're now voting on previous question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The ayes prevail. If you wish to be recorded as a no on that, please see the clerk. We're now voting on sending House Bill 2620 on to full criminal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The noes prevail. The bill fails. Brings us to item number 23, House Bill 2695 by Representative Harris.
Thank you, Chairman, and to the committee. In the TBI annual reports on crime 69.
We're going to need a motion or a second, please. Second. You are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. In the TBI annual report on crimes, 385 domestic violence victims were reported in 2020. And 69,385 domestic violence victims were reported in 2020 and 90 murder victims. And over half of those crimes were from aggravated and simple assault. House Bill 2695 would have the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to create a registry of people convicted of domestic abuse. Currently, TBI has an online registry for animal abuse, but no online registry for domestic abuse. This bill would establish ways for an offender's information to be removed after serving their time or after an expungement, but the registry would list the offender's name, date of birth, offense, and offenses related to domestic abuse, conviction date, and counties of conviction, just like the animal abuse registry that we have. And I ask for your support on the legislation.
Thank you for your explanation. Any questions for the sponsor on this? Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support your bill on this one. In a point in fact, as my experience as assistant DA, for whatever reason, it seems like after a significant other had been with an abuser, they'll leave, and sometimes they migrate to another abuser. But the abuser always tends to hook up with another significant other and engages in the same practice. And it would be nice for Tennesseans to at least have the ability to look somebody up and get their history before they decide to start dating that person or whatever it is. So it kind of makes sense to me, particularly when we've got one for meth users and animal abusers. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. And I thank the sponsor for the bill. I've brought similar bills since I got here in 2007. And I've never understood why the legislature is reluctant to treat women and men who are spouses or significant others, treat them with the same dignity and respect that we do animals. We allow people to make decisions on whether they're going to make an animal available to an owner because we have a registry. And yet we do not have in place a registry that will allow individuals who could be subjected to physical harm or death. We don't have a registry in place that would allow them to make an informed decision in a relationship. And we're treating an animal relationship with by bringing transparency to that relationship between the animal and the owner. I never understood why we resist making that same information available to someone who wants to be in a personal relationship. And we know these folks to a great degree are good at what they do, that they know how to prey upon women or men who are going to allow the abuse or will miss the early warning signs of abuse, get locked in, are physically, emotionally abused, and sometimes murdered, killed, merely because they did not know what they were getting into. I think we have a responsibility to our society, to the community, to those victims, and to potential victims to pass your bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I encourage my colleagues to support it and to vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, Representative Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with much of what has been said. We want to give folks as much notice and opportunity as possible, but to explain, there's been a lot of questions about why the legislature's been reluctant. I feel it's appropriate to at least talk about that reluctance and why it exists. I think it's a public policy decision for this committee to make, but the concern that you would have a chilling effect on people who are being abused reporting that abuse, because as you very accurately and aptly stated, these abusers are crafty at what they do. They're master manipulators oftentimes. And, just say, hey, if you call the cops on me, then my name, all my personal information, everything, I'm going to be on this registry for life. And, you and we're in a special relationship and we can patch this up and tomorrow's going to be a better day, which is what I hear from 100% of domestic abuse victims, is that for years and years they're in this cycle of when it's good, there's nothing better, but when it's bad, there's absolutely nothing worse. And the next morning, your memory of it is, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And so, again, I think it's a worthwhile debate for this committee to have, but I don't want anybody watching at home or listening in the audience to think that we're somehow cold-hearted and don't want to see this come to a good conclusion. I think it's important to understand what the arguments against are, is that if we have a chilling effect on folks reporting these crimes, then we are, in essence, incarcerating another generation of victims inside their own homes. So just wanted to offer that for the committee, and that's all.
Thank you, Representative Harris.
And thank you so much, everyone that has also made comments to this and to Chairman Curcio on that. On that point, that is why we made it to where it wasn't life like it is on our sexual abuse registry, which would be in the similar posture, and people would think the same thing. But this one would only be for a 5-year period. So it's not for life.
Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If 2 kids got in a fight on a school bus and one of those kids was charged with assault, would they go on this registry?
From my understanding, and it may be a question for legal, I was under the impression that it would be listed as just for domestic abuse cases and not for cases on child abuse related situations. So
Okay, on my
they would have
summary
to-
it said assault, so I was just checking
Domestic
that.
abuse would have to be one of the crimes that was committed in that act.
I will say that if 2 siblings were to get into a fight, then one of them would be on the registry, because the definition of what domestic is. But we can go to legal services.
correct.
Let's go to
Chairman,
legal.
you're
We'll go
correct.
out of session and hear from legal.
Michelle Fogarty, Legal Services. Domestic abuse victim means any person who falls within the following categories. Adults are minors who are current or former spouses. Adults are minors who live together or who have lived together. Adults are minors who are dating or who have dated or who have had a sexual relationship. Adults are minors related by blood or adoption. Adults are minors who are related or formerly were related by marriage, or adult or minor children of a person in a relationship described in any of those previous descriptions. So yes, siblings would be included.
Thank you. Legal services, while I have you, would that include college roommates that may have gotten into an altercation?
Those could fall under the subdivision 5B, adults or minors who live together.
Very good, thank you. Representative Russell.
Thank you, and this is for legal. If someone is under 18, is it a problem putting their information online for the people to see?
I think they are on the sex offender registry, but I'd have to look into that.
That's a good question.
I think that would be an issue that we may want to look into if we want to go in session and maybe roll it to the hill or till next week and check that out.
Representative Howell, you have a question for legal services? Okay. Any other questions for legal? Let's go back into session. We're back into session. Next on my list is Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And is Kathy Walsh with the Victims' Rights Coalition, is she on the list today?
No, sir, she's not. She and I have talked extensively about this bill.
Yeah, and sponsor, you know I love you, and but this bill has a lot of unintended consequences for victims, and that I've been made aware of, and I just can't support you today. But I want you to know that I know where your heart is, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Leader Lamberth.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Griffey seems very enthusiastic to be recognized. If you would roll me one space, please.
Yes, sir, I will. Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Leader Lambert. I just want to go on record. I think some of the points brought up by Chairman Russell are pretty valid. We do need to address some of those. And I don't know if you want to try to do it, but I did want to at least share with you my concerns that the unintended consequences are maybe problematic. And if we can, maybe you give the District Attorney Generals the ability to, make that part of a plea agreement so the DAs could screen the cases so that only actually the sort of what I call the run-of-the-mill, the true domestic abusers with spouses, boyfriend, girlfriends, whatever situations are the ones that get flagged and put on the registry or something. Just a suggestion. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing the bill.
Thank you, Leader Lamberth.
Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we're now voting on sending House Bill 2695 on to full criminal. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
The noes prevail. The bill fails. If you wish to be recorded as aye, please see the clerk.
Thank you, committee.
46. Members, let's run real quick down to item number 46. You have a motion. It's House Bill 2567 by Representative Sparks. There's been a motion and a second. You are recognized for comments.
Yeah, thank you. If I could share Ricky's story, y'all have all met with Ricky, and I want to thank Chairman Curcio, Chairman Doggett, and Leader Lamberth, and really everyone up here who has taken the time out to meet with this gentleman from my community. Tyler mentioned a scripture earlier by the speaker. I guess it was, "We've all fallen short." And this gentleman from my community fell short with a dove hunt 15 years ago. He's hosted 14 of them successfully. Since then, never had any trouble. But he got a ticket, TWRA, $10 fine, I think it was $20 fine. Then got in some little trouble about 2 years later, TWRA. But it showed up on his permanent record. It's a permanent record. Well, I call this a workforce development issue. AFP, Nick here has met with us and met with Ricky. Ricky's come up 4 times. He couldn't come up today. He does concrete. He works for himself. He doesn't have a powerful lobbyist, working and advocating for him. That's where we come in, and that's where y'all took the time to listen to this gentleman. He got turned down for a job, just part-time. They said, "We can't hire you. You got a criminal record." He's like, "What?" And it was one of his church members. He had a criminal record. Well, they went and looked at those 3 misdemeanors. Well, I want to thank the DA's conference, TBI, Public Defenders Conference, who all came to the table. They're able to help. Leader Lamberth, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and all of y'all to help this gentleman. But there's a lot of Rickies out there that don't have a voice. A lot of Rickies don't have time to come up here and meet with all of you who are very busy. But I just wanted to share that story, what we're going to do, and I want to thank the DA's conference and others who are willing to help me do an expungement clinic. I think Milo College is going to help me, Eric Murray with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. You may know those gentlemen are, GA. But there's a voice for folks, and this is a workforce development. We're having a hard time getting truck drivers for our county. We're seeing trash piling up at the county solid waste areas, high turnover rate with nurses. A lot of folks could employ a Ricky if they didn't have this on their record. It's a Class C misdemeanor. I plan on coming back up here with this legislation possibly next year. But going back to this committee, I appreciate the work that y'all have done on House Bill 1679. Leader Lamberth, appreciate your work, and the governor. Who gets these things? They get it. And like I say, Ricky took a lot of time to come up here. I want to thank Heather Michelle for her time coming up, and Jeremy Gurley, who's an attorney with the state, who took the time out for this guy. And I'll leave you with this. There's a great quote that I shared to my mentor, who was a multimillionaire. He was a lot like Donald Trump, but without the Twitter. Bob Spivey, powerful guy. He always took the time out with me. There's a good quote that says, "You can judge a man's character by how he treats those who cannot offer him anything in return." So thank y'all for taking the time out for Ricky. I'm going to take this off notice, and we'll work on expungement clinics over the summer. Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Without objection, House Bill 2567 off notice. Brings us back to item number 24, House Bill 1927 by Leader Lamberth. You have a motion and a second. You're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment on this that is coded 015310. It's my understanding it had been filed last week. Through some sort of paperwork error, apparently it never made the amendment back. I would ask and move that it be considered today, please, sir.
Second. That is a motion. It has been seconded. Would you provide that code one more time, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It is coded 015310.
310. Okay. You're recognized on that amendment. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. We have to vote to accept the amendment. All those in favor of accepting amendment code 15310, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes prevail. We have accepted the untimely filed amendment. Now we are on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We need a motion and a second on the amendment, please. All right, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this amendment is extremely brief. I mean, it literally just changes the definition in the code in 3917-402, subsection 16C, to say that the definition of marijuana is anything and anything basically that's over 0.3% THC dry weight basis. This issue was created several years ago when we distinguished hemp from marijuana. It's all cannabis. You'll hear several testimonies today, I'm sure from lots of folks that have been contacting you and will testify in front of this committee. We distinguished hemp, and the testimony at that time, I vividly recall it, from lots of advocates at that juncture, was that Delta-9 THC was the only thing anybody could ever get high on. So we were distinguishing products that folks would not be harmed by and calling them hemp, and we were preserving products that folks could be harmed by and become intoxicated and have adverse effects to both short-term and long-term as marijuana. There's 115 people last year that OD'd on high-level spiked THC, specifically the Delta-8 variety. 30% of those were under the age of 5. There are folks that are selling these substances right now in Tennessee. Several of them have called me over the last couple of weeks. There was one gentleman that was explaining to me that he sells a THC product that's 100%. It was very surprising to me. I didn't even know that was scientifically possible. But according to him and what he advertises to his customers, he sells products that are 100% THC. We've never seen anything like that before. Neither have the feds, neither have anyone else, but we're seeing it all day, every day. And unfortunately, we created this problem. So there are no regulations on this product. There are no packaging requirements on this product. There are no protections on this particular product that are in the code because it was never intended to be legal, quite frankly. We set a level at 0.3% THC, and I can go into the Farm Bill and everything else in a few moments if we'd like to go there today. But there is a memo that was sent out September the 15th of 2021 that makes it very clear, both in federal law and state law, that there is a conflict between our definitions and our law. We have the definition we've done of hemp and marijuana, and I've already said hemp is anything under 0.3%, marijuana, everything above 0.3%. Total THC is what this bill does. The current definition says anything under 0.3% Delta-9 THC. So they're distinguishing the types of THC. This is what we're talking about. One molecule off. One tiny molecule shifted from Delta-9 to Delta-8, and that's why, quite frankly, you have 115 people that are overdosing on this is because it is extraordinarily high level. The folks that will testify today, I'm sure, will say that there are no regulations on this. I would argue that 3917-454, that is the Controlled Substance Analogs statute that exists both at federal and state law, does control this. But for whatever reason, it's being sold all over Tennessee. So we must have not made it clear enough when we passed this before. This is not a naturally derived substance from cannabis. It is not. It has to be distilled down. Several folks are shaking their head yes on both sides of this argument. It has to be distilled down and put into a product. That's fine. We can have that conversation, and I'm eager to have it, but there has to be some safety protocols. And quite frankly, for the folks that are both in business and are purchasing these products, I want to make sure that they know what's legal and what is not. I don't want somebody having a gotcha moment where an officer or any law enforcement agency would charge someone who thought they were selling a legal product and then all of a sudden, they're arrested on something. This needs to be a clear-cut line. There needs to be a specific, consistent expectation for customers of this product. I have heard from folks that said, well, look, I was buying this product from this person and it had this effect, and then I switched to this one over here and it had a drastically different effect. Again, there's no standards here. This needs to be clear-cut as to what is and is not legal and what exactly is on the shelves. And quite frankly, we need to make sure this is absolutely not getting into the hands of children, because right now they sell it in gummy bears, and a child is not going to be able to tell the difference in a gummy bear. Now, I say that, neither is an adult. So unless it's properly packaged, properly marked, unless someone exactly knows what that is, you can't look at a gummy bear and know that it has 100 milligrams of THC in it. There's no way to do that. That's the conversation we're having, and I don't know where this conversation will go, but the only thing I need to do was to go back and look at the statutes that we had amended thus far, and again, we created this problem, so in my opinion, we should fix it. There are 9 states that have legalized recreational marijuana that have either banned Delta-8 THC or severely restricted it. I'm not banning Delta-8 THC or any other type of THC in this bill. We're just setting an upper limit of 0.3%. As we discuss this, I would love to hear from some of the testimony today on this last fact. In 2012, the year I was elected, there were 2,215 people that went into inpatient treatment for addiction to cannabis. 2,215. Now, if you read Facebook, you know, marijuana, cannabis, or hemp, none of them are addictive, okay? It's not true, not even remotely true. Not addictive for everyone, but it absolutely, for those folks, those 2,215 people, they needed help in order to be able to stop using a product that was negatively affecting their lives. In 2020, 6,767 people went into inpatient treatment for addiction to cannabis. When we legalized hemp without the safety protocols that are on there, we created a major problem. That's a massive increase. And the only substance that folks go into inpatient treatment for more often than a cannabis product is opioids. It far outpaced alcohol several years ago. So that's what I'm asking committee for you to support today, is that we clear up the statute so that everyone both selling and buying this product knows what's legal and what's not, that we have clear standards on all of this so that both adults and children know exactly the experience they're getting. It is akin to what we have done in restricting alcohol, where if someone purchases a beer, they know by definition in the statutes that it's going to have a certain amount of alcohol content, a much lower level. If someone purchases pure grain alcohol, if that's still a thing, then that is a much, much higher content. But the consumer knows exactly what that is. Right now, that is not the case in our laws, unless you go to the analog statute, and all of this would already be illegal. So we just need to clean this up, and committee members, I'm looking forward to the testimony today, and I would just ask that you consider passing this bill so that we make a crystal clear standard across the state of Tennessee. Thank you.
Thank you for your explanation. Any questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we're now voting to adopt Amendment Code 15310 on the House Bill 1927. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes prevail. You adopt. There is one other amendment that was untimely filed, Amendment Code 16738 by Chairman Curcio. You wish to speak on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do, and I'm at the will of the committee as to whether or not we want to vote to consider I guess we need to have that vote for me to be able to speak on it. Is that correct?
Yes, we will need some action by the committee in order to consider this amendment. All right, you have a motion and a second. We're now voting to consider Amendment Code 16738. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes prevail. We're now on Amendment Code 16738. We will need a motion and a second on that amendment.
Second.
All right, now you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the committee's indulgence. And this, both of these amendments were kind of caught up in the same snafu as far as getting them filed for committee. But I don't seek a vote on this today. Rather, this is a conversation that Leader Lamberth and I are having, and I think his remarks today really lead to where we're headed next, which is let's have this public policy debate about consumer protections, about proper labeling and proper licensing. The example was used, and I think it's a perfect one, of when I purchase a beer off the shelf, I have notice as to what percentage of alcohol is contained in that beer. I also have personal experience to know how that impacts my body and what happens next after I drink that beer and so on and so forth. And then take it to the opposite extreme of that scale. I can walk into the liquor store and purchase pure grain alcohol, as the example was used, and I have notice because the percentage is on that bottle, and I may or may not have personal experience as to how that impacts my body. But I can make an informed decision. There's proper packaging and proper disclosure. That's a conversation that I think we need to have. We do have a product that, however it became that way, is legal in this state. I have many constituents in my district who own very large farms who are producing this product, and it would not comply with the amendment that was just adopted that will go into effect July 1. And so their question is, what do I do with my crop between now? Do I just become a felon overnight? How do I get rid of it appropriately? How do we progress towards the public policy that the General Assembly has laid out? So I think all of these are very worthwhile. So the amendment that I have before you, again, not going to ask you to vote on it, but it takes us to a direction of more consumer protections, disclosure, which I think is a conversation that the leader would like to have. And as the full committee chair, he and I are working together to try to come up with what that framework and structure looks like between sub and full. And so I look forward to hearing from members of this committee as well as we continue to work on that. Because again, I think we've got some law-abiding citizens in Tennessee who have moved forward in a good faith effort, who have legitimate and in some cases very large businesses. And so if we are going to make a drastic change into that, I just want to make sure that we don't wake them up one morning and make them into a felon. So if we're going to untie the knot, let's untie it deliberately would be my request. So with that, I withdraw the amendment.
Okay. Thank you for that. Without objection, Amendment Code 16738 is withdrawn. All right. We are now on House Bill 1927 as amended. I will say we have very limited time left in this committee. There's about 15 minutes. I have an extensive list of people who would wish to testify. I'm going to go through here. Let me go out of session first. Out of session, I'm going to call off your name. If you're here, raise your hand. Don't jump up and run up yet because I'm going to ask you a question. Evan Austell? No. Maggie Clark? No. D.W. Cooper? Nope. Cole Ebel? Present. John Matthew Holder? Nope. Steve Johnson? Nope. Chris Castleberry? Oh, you are here?
My name is Steve Johnson. I'm not expecting to talk.
Okay.
Maybe talk about another one, but that is my name.
Oh. There are two.
I think the one you're referencing is not here.
Okay. Alternatively, I have Chris Castleberry. So, you wish to speak today?
Yes.
John Kearns? Jesse West? Lori Nanny? I hope I said that right. No? Sam? Thank you for that. Christopher Yates? And Jason Pickle?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I have 7 here. Generally, our practice is 4 minutes. That's just a courtesy that we extend. We could go less than that if that would be something. Would any one of you in that group be opposed to 1 minute each in your testimony? Is there a? I'm sure you would. We're going to be out of time here very soon. I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak, but yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to remind everybody the posture that we find ourselves in. I sense from the committee that we've got the votes to pass this out of the subcommittee today. There will be extensive conversation between sub and full, but also in the full committee as well. So I don't want to discourage anybody from testifying, but this will, in all likelihood, absolutely not be your last chance. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes, sir. Leader Lamberth.
Mr. Chairman, I concur with that. I know we're tight on time today, but it is, I think, an ongoing conversation. I want to hear from everyone. You're welcome in my office anytime. Please call. I'll stay as later as long as you guys want to. It doesn't have to be in committee, but if there are things you want on the record, I'm fine with that too. But I do know we're tight on time.
All right. So, we got some takers? I'm good with a minute. Yeah, I'm good. Good. If you're good with a minute, come up here. I've got 4 spaces, so if you would introduce yourself for the record, and I'll give you a minute each. And I apologize for the time shortage, but according to Chairman Curcio here, this does make it onto the full committee. You will have another opportunity to state what you need. We'll start over here first. If you want to introduce yourself for the record, you'll have a minute.
My name is Christopher Yates. I own and operate Southern Sugar Leaf in Dixon County.
Make sure you're up.
Yes. Can you hear me?
No, just push the button.
Oh, push the button.
Yes, sir.
I've never used one of these. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm Christopher Yates with Southern Sugar Leaf in Dixon County. We are a Tennessee Department of Agriculture licensed food manufacturer. So labeling is very important to us. We understand why that matters for the same reasons it does in the alcohol industry. We've always been about consumer safety from day one, and we do want to see regulations. That's why we support bills like House Bill 1960, and anything else we can do with that would be great. So what this for us is about is our consumers, which are people like veterans and my parents, you know, and people who benefit from this for whatever reasons they have. We don't make medical claims. We're very clear about that. But that being said, that's what I have to say, and I appreciate you guys doing what you do. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Next, if you'll identify yourself, please.
My name is John Kearns. I'm the co-founder and CEO of New Bloom Labs in Chattanooga. New Bloom Labs provides the chemical analysis of hemp and hemp-derived products for the purposes of legal compliance, quality control, and consumer safety. In short, my company exists to ensure that hemp products are sold with trustworthy labeling and are safe for human consumption. Our lab is ISO 17025 certified and registered with the DEA. Current policy requires zero testing on hemp-derived consumer products. Current policy offers zero credentialing demands for these labs. Current policy leaves the hemp industry to police itself with no mechanisms for enforcement or to root out would-be bad actors. HB 1927 as amended means prohibition when all that's needed are reasonable guidelines. The bill as amended amounts to a blunt instrument when all that's needed is a scalpel. And I'm going to skip ahead and address a pervasive myth about Delta-8 THC. And that myth is that labs cannot test this compound and decipher it from Delta-9 THC, which, unlike other forms of THC, is a controlled substance. This is false. I understand the TBI lab has been on record saying that they can't see the difference between Delta-8 and Delta-9. Let me assure you that New Bloom Labs does this work every single day on thousands of Delta-8 products every single week. I thank the committee for its time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next, if you would introduce yourself, you'll have 1 minute, please.
Yes, my name is Sam Oshlin, and I'm the president of the Tennessee Healthy Alternatives Association. I also own a few retail stores in Williamson and Murray counties. Congress passed the bill in 2018 and kind of set a standard that people relied on, and they took out loans, and they risked it all for this. And now it feels like we're changing the rules halfway through the game. I know if this bill were to pass, I know it just says it's 0.3%, but that is a ban. It is. You would think you would want it to be, pure and things of that nature. And as far as like the labeling concerns go, I know for like our products, and I can attest to Chris's products over here, like it does say like very clearly, like this is 25 milligrams per piece, 100 milligrams total under 0.3% Delta-9 THC. Like I've yet to see things that aren't labeled, but I understand when it leaves the store, that's a different story, and that there does need to be revisions on the labeling requirements and different methods. But as this bill as amended, it'll kill businesses across the state. I mean, we'll drop 50%. I'll have to fire multiple people, and I mean, I don't just rely upon these cannabinoids, but there's members we have in our thing here that do. Like it's completely 70, 80, 90% these cannabinoids. I had a lot of other stuff to say too today to the tune of, farmers being forced to.
I'm sorry, sir. Your minute is up. So we're going to go on to the next guy. Thank you.
My name is Cole Ebel. I am the founder of Cumberland Cannabis Company. I used to work in the pharmaceutical industry, mainly with corticosteroids. I share a lot of your concerns on Delta-8, and I think many in the industry do share those concerns as far as labeling goes, packaging, things of that nature. And just as this gentleman said, we're just hitting it with a blunt object where we shouldn't be is all. We want to help. We want to make these safer. We don't want kids using these products. We want them distinguishable. So we're with you. We want to work with you. We want to also thank you for allowing us to have this product. These THC products, they're saving lives. They saved my father's life. They are keeping people off of opioids. That is what a real overdose is an opioid overdose. That's where you can die. What they're calling these cannabis overdoses aren't overdoses. They're actually anxiety attacks. We don't want that either. But we need proper labeling. We believe that, but we don't need to be hitting this with a blunt instrument. We need to be hitting this with a scalpel, and we need to be working together because y'all have done an amazing job with this industry. The Tennessee Department of Agriculture has been phenomenal, but we're at a place where we've developed enough that we can get some regulations in there that do continually save lives from real overdoses and saving lives with, cancer patients and so many other ailments. But I really sincerely appreciate y'all having me today, and definitely please consider a different alternative than this bill because it will put people out of business and it will end up killing people.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. My name is Jesse West. I'm an attorney, and I'm a graduate of Lincoln Memorial University. And I've spoken with Leader Lambert.
Turn your microphone on, please.
Oh, can you hear me good?
Oh, I can hear you now. Good.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Again, my name's Jesse West, and I'm an attorney. I just wanted to point out a few legal issues. Again, I've spoken with Leader Lambert about some of these, that this bill, as it's amended, creates these issues. For one, what it does, it changes the definition of marijuana, and it doesn't change the hemp definition. And what that does, it creates a conflict in the law to where you have different standards for the hemp industry, which is Delta-9 THC, and then you have a total THC standard in the marijuana code. So that'll be a direct conflict. One thing Representative Curcio spoke about is the idea of creating felons overnight. Essentially what that means is you're changing that definition and you're creating a lot of products that are all of a sudden going to be illegal. And we're worried that a lot of people are not going to understand this is not just a ban on products. This takes existing products. For example, grandma who's got gummies on her nightstand that she takes to sleep and for pain management, she would then be a felon overnight. We don't think people are going to understand that. It also does several other things. And my overall point is this, when you talk about the fiscal note on this, it's negative, I think, a few $1 million. You also have to consider the lawsuits this is going to bring, because people like these are going to be out of a business that's been legal for 3 years, and that always brings lawsuits. So,
Hey, thank you very much for your time and to our guest. I do have another, Jason Pickle. Yes, sir. I believe that will be the last one on this list, on this panel. You'll have 1 minute if you will introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Jason Pickle, and I'm the co-founder of Volunteer Botanicals out of Christiana, Tennessee. And our company is a technology company. We take the hemp plant, we can break it apart, we turn it into pharmaceutical-grade powders, then they can be compounded back together at specific ratios to achieve more medicinal approaches to this plant. One thing that we know is there's far more yet still to be discovered from this plant. The reason we're here for Delta-8 is because we didn't know about Delta-8 many years ago, right? So here we are learning in real time and we're on the bleeding edge. But one thing that I would like to really, really stress is when we govern from a place of misunderstanding, we oftentimes put the wrong rules into place. So it's very important that before we really come out with a governing model that is going to change what we're doing, not only as us as a business, that we really put due diligence and time forward into really understanding to get the proper labeling to make these products safe. 0.3% will not do it. It's going to be a milligram per unit per dose. If it's a 0.3%, we can make a large, huge serving and still have 150 milligrams of D8 in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank all of these folks for being here. Again, this is going to be a true ongoing conversation. I also want to say, just to commend our chairman here, because I've been in his position before, this is not his rule. He's not kicking you out of here at 11 o'clock. We actually have to vacate the room at that time, so I didn't want you to think that we were just creating an arbitrary, rapid-fire speed dating, let's talk about cannabis thing. So I just want to thank Chairman Doggett for what he's doing, because like I said, I take the arrows in the next committee. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, doing a great job.
Thank you. Leader Lamberth.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to thank you all for your testimony, and quite frankly, there's not as much daylight between where I am and where you guys are. It's just a matter of how to figure that out. So I look forward to the conversation. I think this is a really good starting point. I hope this bill passes the committee today, and I know we're tight on time, but please, these conversations need to continue. I look forward to them continuing and hearing from you all additionally on all of this. You brought up, I made copious notes, and I've had lots of conversations out of committee as well, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other members? Seeing none, we're going to go back into session. A little late there, Representative, but I'll recognize you right now.
All right, I can do it out of session. Just kudos to the young barrister from Lincoln Memorial University, our former Supreme Court Chief Justice Gary Wade was the dean. They recruited him for dean, and he recruited quite a few of our folks who are former interns from the legislature to become lawyers. So just a shout out to Lincoln Memorial University, Duncan School of Law.
Thank you, Representative. Question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we're voting on sending House Bill 1927 as amended on the full criminal. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes prevail. The bill moves forward. Members, that comes to a conclusion for our time of today. I'm just going to recess. Oh, we roll. Okay. Thank you. All remaining bills that we did not get to on the calendar today will be heard next week. We are adjourned.